All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our what I believe is our first live walkthrough for our this year 2020's Doors Open Baltimore program. And today's tour is going to be a virtual walking tour of the Vernon Pumping Station. The program is presented by the Baltimore Architecture Foundation and Baltimore City Department of Public Works and the Department of General Services. My name is Margaret DeArchangelis. I have the pleasure of being the chair of the Doors Open Planning Committee, and I'll be your host for this afternoon's walking tour. I want to start by thanking everyone who donated to be with us today, and a special thank you to our Doors Open sponsors, grantors, and our in-kind supporters. Their support has been crucial this year. If you're joining us for free and like what you see, I encourage you to make a donation to the Baltimore Architecture Foundation that will allow us to continue our efforts with Doors Open Baltimore both this year and into the future. Today's tour marks the first program in our Civic Pride in Industry Week, where we'll be offering behind-the-scenes tours of city buildings and exploring the city's industrial legacy. For me, this is particularly exciting because last year we had the opportunity to have the Eastern Avenue Pumping Station, which you see right there in Nathan's photograph, as part of Doors Open Baltimore. And so we had over 500 people go through the Public Works Museum that day, and so many people wanted to know about the actual working and goings on of the pumping station portion of the building. But with due to restrictions on the number of people and safety, we couldn't invite visitors in. So that's what I see as one of the real great upsides of this virtual event this year. We have the opportunity to showcase even special places that we've never been able to have participate in the program. So now to move on to today's tour. BAF board members Jackson Gilman Forlini and Tom Liebel are on site with a crew to guide us through the Vernon Pumping Station. We're going to stop sharing the screen now and turn it over to our tour team. During the tour...
Okay, I want to get that right.
Yeah. All right. During the tour, our camera person will be pinned. Please make sure your Zoom is set to speaker view by clicking the view button in the top right corner of your Zoom screen. Please add any questions that you might have to the Zoom chat box, and we'll get to as many of those at the end of the tour as we can. Also, on a logistics note, Jackson's gonna start with some introductions outside where the noise is a little bit less, and then there'll be very little narration as we go through the building just due to the noise, but then we'll have that opportunity for questions again at the end. So with that, Jackson, take it away.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Are we on?
we can.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jackson Gilman Forlini. I'm the Historic Preservation Officer for the Baltimore City Department of General Services. I'm here today with Andy Hofert of the Department of Public Works, an engineer, and also I'm here with Tom Liebel of Mosley Architects and the Baltimore City Commission on Historic and Architectural Preservation. We're really thrilled today to be with you at this gem in the crown of Baltimore's waterworks infrastructure. This is the Vernon Pumping Station. And we're here today for the very first day of the Doors Open Baltimore theme, Civic Pride and Industry. And we're better to celebrate the melding of civic pride and industry, but right here at one of the most beautiful buildings that I think I've ever seen, with one of the most prosaic functions I think I've ever seen. But nevertheless, an indispensable part of what makes Baltimore great and what gives us civic pride. So we're going to be taking a tour inside to this 1930 pumping station, which has been in active use ever since. We're going to talk about the infrastructure and the engineering behind it, and we're going to talk about the history and the architecture. Just to give you a little bit of orientation, we are right now underneath the Jones Falls Expressway. And if you've ever been on I-83 at the 28th Street exit and you've seen a green roof, well, this is that building. And it's one that I'm very excited to present today because I've been curious the whole time I've lived in Baltimore what this building is. And so we're really excited to show it to you. So to kick things off, I want to ask Andy a little bit about, Mr. Hofert works here. He's an engineer. And I want to ask him a little bit about sort of what powers this station and what is it used for? What is the function of this building?
So this station takes water from Druid Lake, which is the first zone water, which provides water to downtown. And it takes that water and pumps it up to the second zone. And it provides water for the second zone. We talked about zones referring to pressure. As we pump it up, it provides even pressure for that zone throughout the city. It pumps from the first zone up to the second zone, and it provides water there, and then it gets pumped up further into the county. Just a quick note, the water here is produced at the Montebello filtration plant. There are actually two filtration plants there, Montebello 1 and 2. They get their water from Loch Raven Reservoir, and we have a third filtration plant in the city, and that's Ashburton Filtration Plant, and that gets water from Liberty Reservoir.
So about how much water passes through this pumping station on a daily basis?
This pumping station either produces or pumps 30 million gallons or 40 million gallons.
30 million to 40 million gallons every day?
Yes, every day.
That's
yeah.
amazing. That's amazing.
We process a lot of water through this pumping station.
So would you say this pumping station is indispensable to anybody who pours a glass of water for themselves any day of the year in Baltimore?
Well, there's water that we drink that doesn't go through this pumping station.
Okay.
However, definitely, I think it was built in 1930, and I don't know how many days it's been off service, but it's relatively few.
Now, when we go inside, it's very noisy, is that right? So we're going to have to narrate a little bit for our viewers what exactly we're going to see when we go inside. So there's some big sort of dynamo-looking things right when we come in. What are those?
So they're motors with the pumps.
Okay.
And we have 3 pumps in there, a 30 million gallon, a 40 million gallon, and we actually have a 50 million gallon pump, which we hardly ever use. They call those larger pumps fire flow. For in the event of a fire, it's able to provide water for the city in an emergency.
That's amazing. Now, I also wanted to know, you said this building was constructed in 1930. Has it been in continuous use ever since then?
Yeah, I think that would be 90 years. Yeah, it's been pretty much in continuous use. And again, Druid Lake is finished drinking water. The water goes from there through a chlorinator, and then it gets pumped throughout the system. Very rarely would we take this pump station offline.
So let's talk a little bit about the history of this place. It's an amazing building, and Tom Liebel here is an expert on the history of Baltimore's waterworks infrastructure. And Tom, now you're also an architect as well as a scholar of historic architecture. Tell me, is it typical to have a pumping station that looks like this?
Well, these days, certainly not. But, back in the day, we took a great deal more civic pride in our infrastructure. And, some of this spins out from the Civic Beautiful movement, City Beautiful movement, where it was a general elevation of the architectural quality of public spaces.
Yeah.
But also, this was advertising here that back in the 1930s, we were still proud that we could talk about having fresh water, and we're going to see tomorrow at the Eastern Pumping Station, we had a sewer system. This was a matter of urban pride, civic pride, because a lot of cities didn't have that. So it was really important to kind of showcase the fact that we had this amazing, at that time, new infrastructure that was really exciting to celebrate, because it put us in the forefront of cities in the country.
Yeah, and one of the things that strikes me is just how ornate the building is. I mean, it has a Spanish tile roof. It's covered in glazed architectural terracotta. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And it's so polychromatic, as we say. What is it about? Why did they build a building like this, and it would spare no expense, not least of all during the Great Depression when it was completed?
Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, it's lasted 90 years
yeah.
without any major requirement for improvement. they were built to last,
Yeah.
because once again, that was important for this. And you know, where we from time to time have challenges with the infrastructure these days, all the stuff is a century old. I mean, how many other things can you run continuously for 90 years and not have a problem with it? So you know, there's that with it, but also once again, it was back to the idea of civic pride, and that we wanted to make these as showcases here. So you can see everything from over here. We have the decorative coining on the sides of the buildings. We have over here all these sort of decorative panels up here that aren't just colorful, but also you see dancing fishes in there. That it talks about the fact this is a water pumping station.
Right,
There's a lot of symbolism in what we have here. And if we walk maybe over this way, we can look more at the entry sequence here and some of the terracotta over here.
That's good. Let's go take a look at that. But you mentioned something interesting, which is that this was an exercise in durability. This was an investment for the future. And here we are now, 80 years later, and it's still working. And so I wanted to ask Andy, as this person who works here, on a functional level, was this investment worth it? Are we still, as a city, reaping the dividends of this kind of durability?
Yeah, I'd say so. The pump stations do go through periodic improvements when we, upgrade from an older motor in the 50s to the newer motors that we're going to be putting in. Probably next year, it's due for a significant upgrade. I just want to add, before the interstate was put in, this pump station was a corner piece of the reservoir. You would look down here and just see a beautiful building,
Right.
and it kind of reflected Baltimore City and the pride we had in our infrastructure. But in terms of the pumping station, yeah, it's the physical building has certainly lasted.
It's not just an artifact; it's an actual living, functioning part of our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, when we're going to do the renovation next year, we're requiring the contractor to keep half the station running at all times.
Fantastic.
So it's not something, and that's a engineering complexity that is not easy to overcome.
So let's get a little closer and let's look at some of the architectural details, Tom, that you mentioned, so that folks at home can get a better glimpse at really some of these magnificent ornamentation. So let's get a little closer now. So we're coming up here at the main entrance of the pumping station. And one of the things that you see, what strikes you the most is this kind of door surround here, which you can see is very, very colorful. And this is terracotta, isn't it, Tom?
It is. It's glazed terracotta. It's a very common building material from back in the day. It works kind of like brick, only it's a fired clay product, but you can get so much ornamentation. It would have been cast and then glazed on top of that. And then with that, you still have a nice running bond of brick here.
Yeah.
That's sort of, once again, and going back to the durability, if you look at this building, there's no signs of cracks. There's no signs of real failure in the building. It was really, really built so robustly.
I was reading too that the front doors are actually made out of bronze. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
They are. Yes,
they are bronze. That's fantastic. Now, also these light fixtures as well on either side of the door. It looks like cast iron. Is that right?
It is cast iron, and what you see from this, from a design perspective, is it's very eclectic. You have, you said, a Spanish tile roof. You have a Gothic-ish light fixture here. You have, with the Corinthian columns, you have sort of more classical architecture. That, back in the day, there was really, there wasn't a overly strong adherence to a particular style. Things were composed and grabbed and mixed to create these really wonderful, wonderful properties here.
Yeah, it is amazing. And it also seems too that, for our architecture buffs and architectural history buffs, it seems like 1930 was a little late for this style, right? I mean, by 30, we're starting to get more into like the international style. And is that a fair assessment?
In some areas, although you never had it's not like someone flipped a switch and all of a sudden said,
right.
"Oh, we're out doing international style."
You're right.
But you're absolutely right. And, I'm speculating, but it might well be the fact that, the city infrastructure was more of an old guard type thing that would probably not necessarily embrace the avant-garde, but you do see city infrastructure in, let's say, the 50s goes in international style, very clearly after World War II.
Yeah. Well, let's go inside and we'll take a look at some of the really amazing machinery that's in here. And for the engineering people, there's something for you too. So let's go in and we'll point out a few things. It is very noisy inside, so we may not be able to narrate it. But we'll walk through, and then we'll meet up in a quieter room and sort of just talk about what are some of the things that we've seen. All right, so we're heading in now through the bronze doors. And I don't know if you can hear me, but here we have some of the original controls. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know if they're original, but they're quite old. They may be out of the 50s. They could very well be. I'm not sure of the age.
Okay. And then we have over here, of course, a bronze plaque dedicating the construction of this building in 1930. Now, this machinery here, is this still used?
This is not used. These are circuit breakers that need to be removed.
Oh, okay, but they are a glimpse into the past.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, that's great. So let's work our way around the outside of the building here. Oh, yeah, that's good.
This is a removable panel to get equipment downstairs here.
Oh, I see. Brian, can we show this panel here on the floor? You said put equipment downstairs, right?
Exactly. So you lift points here, you lift it up to crane bigger pieces in, which you look over there, there's the big crane that they used to lift all this heavy equipment in here. So the building was designed to swap things out when it was needed. It's not a matter they built it and went, oh, what happens when we need to swap a pump out? That's already pre-planned in the way they laid the building out.
I'll add also that the infrastructure not within this room is quite elaborate. There's a suction header on the water piping. It has many valves and control systems. Then throughout here, as you're exiting this area right here around the pumps, there's also valving. One of the valves is the cone valve. It's quite large, and as well there are places over that to remove those.
And these are the actual pumps down below, right?
Correct.
These are the pumps.
That's the largest pump. That's the 50 million gallon.
Right.
And it's motor right there.
So let's see if we can get a shot of the pumping system. Or these are the pumps down below. And these are moving how much water again, did you say?
Well, this one doesn't operate very much, but it's a 50 million gallon
50
pump.
million gallon pump. Amazing. That's amazing.
With the renovation, we're going to have 3 pumps that are very similar in size, so we can rotate through them.
You can see the outflow on the other side of the pump over there. So that's where the water's going out, correct?
Yeah, and in this pump, the water comes up from the bottom, and then it proceeds out that way. And the back side of the building is actually where we get the water from Druid Lake, and then it sends it up here and then out into the system.
Fantastic. All right, let's walk around quickly the outside, and then we'll come back around and talk a little bit more about what we're seeing.
Despite the industrial use, you can still see the decorative brick. It's quite interesting.
Even on the interior, the architectural themes continue.
The railing, instead of choosing a very industrial railing, they added decorative nature to it.
And so you can also see above us here this giant crane system for lifting machinery in and out of the building. Now, what is this here on the wall?
So this is a drawing of the pump station, showing the pumps and the water mains coming up from below, and then the discharge piping right there. This pump station actually had room to put a 4th pump in. That hasn't been utilized at this point, and we're in the current renovation, we don't have that planned. I'll add a quick note. Before our current maintenance shop was in place, this was the facility that our maintenance shop worked out of. So it wouldn't have been easy to work out of this building with all of the noise and just the chaos happening in here. It feels like it would be tough to have a whole team of people show up here daily. So.
Is this image original to the building's construction? Is this an original design drawing? To your knowledge.
To the best of my knowledge, it is. Yeah.
Well, let's go into the electrical station where we can get the noise a little bit. Brian, here we have, these are part of the original control system, are they not? These meters.
Yeah, these meters would tell us the flow and the pressures of entering and exiting each pump.
Wow. Okay.
Those controls are completely outdated, whereas these controls are what we're currently using.
These are the newer ones.
And they are still outdated, so that's why we're due for an upgrade.
All right, we're now getting into the back room, which is where the electrical supply is for the entire pumping station. Now these are these transformers, right? When were these installed?
Again, these are probably, gosh, I don't know the dates. I would guess in the 50s or 60s.
1950s or 60s.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, one of the things you pointed out in the other room that I'm not sure everyone could hear, it's very interesting, is that you can see from inside that the architectural detailing is consistent from inside and out. And around the outside of the perimeter wall, up at the roof level, you have the same glazed architectural tiles, these terracotta architectural tiles. So, you know, this is not just a facade of ornamentation, right? There's a continuity there. Tom, what are your thoughts on that?
It is, and what's interesting is you go inside to outside, there is that attention to detail, but if you look at the decorative frieze up there, it's simpler.
Yes.
So where you're presenting to the outside, it was much more significant. And I really appreciate what Andy said about the view you used to have from here to Druid Hill Reservoir, because this was the front door.
Right.
And what we haven't seen today is the backside and sides of the building, which are still very nice, but they don't have the same level of elaborate ornamentation that the front door does. That was sort of, you know, all the detail went into there because that was the front view that we were trying to celebrate.
That's right. So I think we're probably getting close to Q&A at this point. So we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. And our assistant DGS employee, Imani Edwards, is here to helping us. So she'll be reading us your questions. So type them in the chat box, and then Nathan will read it back to us, and we'll be able to get your questions.
Thanks. Actually, Margaret's going to be reading some of the questions. I see we
Keep
have some again. If you want to take over, Margaret.
I am happy to do so, and the questions are ticking in left and right. The first question that we've got is, how will the improvements / updates be funded?
So the first question is, how will the improvements and updates be funded?
How will what? Oh, how will they be funded? Improvements. Okay, so improvements to the property, that's something we didn't talk a lot about, but since this is an active station and it's scheduled for capital improvement, is that right?
Yes, it is. It's scheduled for capital improvement.
Okay.
And this renovation that's happening is going to include a generator, the generator building, all new discharge and suction side headers for the plant, for the building, and also all new pumps and the new electrical control gear.
And that's funded out of the city's capital improvement program?
Absolutely, yeah, it's out of the capital improvement program. There's a regular upgrade of all the pump stations that has to happen. I think we have around 20 pump stations throughout the city and county.
So for those of you who are viewing, this is your taxpayer dollars at work. Hard at work here every day, making sure that clean water is delivered to all the citizens of Baltimore. Next question is if there's another one.
Another question about the operation of the building. How many people work at the
also, I'd like to point out that city infrastructure like this goes through chat. So
yes,
as we get ready to see those, we see the proposed renovations, we'll still make sure that the historic integrity of the building is maintained.
Absolutely, and that's always a challenge, isn't it? You know, balancing form and function when it comes to necessary upgrades. And so there's a lot of thought that goes into that, isn't there?
Absolutely.
And that happens at the project management level too, as well at DPW.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know, we have the more modern pump stations, which are the current design seems to be a lot simpler. Some of these have a little unique feature to each pump station that provides its own challenges in the design phase.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have another question?
Yes, this is an operations question. How many people work in this facility every day?
How many people work in this facility every day? Well, Andy, how many people?
So in this facility, we have, nobody actually works in here. We have 6 people, or we come to this facility 6 times a day and make sure everything's operating correctly. So it used to be that this was the maintenance shop, and that's changed. So currently it's just, we have it, do our rounds, 24/7 shifts. Twice a shift, they come to a number of facilities, and this is one of those. This is a critical pump station to the city's water system.
Fantastic. Okay, and any other questions from our viewers?
Yes, the next question,
Stand
do
by.
we know the lead architect on the project when the building was built in the 1930s?
Yes, the architect. You know, it's actually something I should have researched before we got here. Did either of you know who the architect is?
Give me 2 minutes, ask another question, I'll go look at the plaque.
Okay, go look at the plaque. All right, let's have another question from the audience while we stand by on who the architect was. Good
Okay.
question.
Then our next question, with the work that's going to be, the capital investment that will be going on in the building, is it going to be
add a comment
renovation?
while we're
Please,
waiting.
yeah.
So we have in this facility, it's powered from BG&E. We have electric, and it comes in at 13,000 volts. And we have 2 feeders, 2 feeds from BG&E to assure that we have continuous power in this facility. This one is 13,255, and that's an older feeder at 7,001. So those 2 feeders, you know, we assure we have power here. There's moments when both feeders go out, and that's why we're adding a 3rd power source, having an outside generator which can power the station also. And that goes along with the critical nature of this pump station. We want to assure that you have clean water, and it's very rarely that in Baltimore City you don't have water that's at your tap. We have moments like 2 winters ago, we had a massive amount of main breaks, and we were losing over 100 million gallons a day out to the streets, and that was quite challenging for everybody throughout the city.
So, Tom.
So the architect was Frank O. Hyder.
Okay.
And it was interesting looking at the plaque after the mayor, the water commission, all the engineers, the contractor, at the bottom is the architect.
At the bottom is the architect. Well, but the architect in our hearts and in our minds will always be on top.
And you know, but it also shows, you know, the fact this was an important piece of infrastructure. So actually the engineering did take precedence.
Yes.
It wasn't just here, let's put a pretty building, maybe just drop a pump in it.
Right.
It was more, we need these pumps. How do we encase them?
Absolutely. So I think we have maybe time for one more question.
Okay, then our next question is, again, we'll talk about
Stand
the
by.
architecture of the
Get
building.
your questions right now.
What is the city's process to ensure the historic features of the building are protected during upgrades? Tom mentioned CHAP, so if he can explain a little bit more about that.
So the question was, what is the city's process to ensure that
The city's process to preserve the historic appearance of the building. Right. So yeah, we did touch on that briefly. I mean, it starts in the design phase with DPW getting a design consultant to balance those needs, right, of the newer infrastructural needs and the older architecture.
Yeah, and definitely the design incorporates, you know, the need to maintain the look of the building. I think one example is the Guilford pump station. I don't know if it's okay to talk about that, but that pump station had an additional building next to it for the chlorination and for the electrical distribution. That building matches quite nicely to the older building.
Yeah.
Additionally, inside that building, we had to be quite careful with how we were, you know, arranging the pipes and whatnot. We were limited by the original design of the building, and again, they did a great job of, you know, balancing those 2 needs.
And then at that point at which the design is completed, we'll then go to CHAP, who will, if it's a historic landmark or in a landmark district, and then CHAP will performance review.
And actually, any city-owned historic property, so it doesn't have to be landmark, but
Right.
properties like this, we do. And actually, Guilford Pumping Station is a great example where, you know, the initial design was presented to us. We had some concerns about it. We worked with the engineering team to get it more into a sympathetic renovation with the historic structure, and ended up looking great. So it was a lot of back and forth where we didn't say, no, you can't do anything. You can't preserve buildings like this in amber. You have to sort of allow them to evolve in their function. But we made sure that the integrity of the historic structure was maintained.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's probably all the time we have left today, but I wanted to thank my two co-guides here, Andy Hofert of the Baltimore City Department of Public Works, Tom Liebel, Mosley Architects, and the Commission on Historical and Architectural Preservation. I'd also especially like to thank the Doors Open Baltimore Committee and the Baltimore Architecture Foundation for putting on all of these events this month. We are so excited to be presenting another two gems of Baltimore's waterworks infrastructure. Tomorrow, we're going to be back at the same time at the Eastern Avenue Pumping Station, where we'll see how sewage and wastewater is treated in Baltimore. Right now, we're at the freshwater stage, and tomorrow we're going to go see what happens when we're dealing with wastewater. So please join us again tomorrow, and then on Saturday, we will be at the Roland Water Tower, which is a now defunct water tower, but an amazing architectural treasure. My name is Jackson Gilman Forlini. I work for the Baltimore City Department of General Services, maintaining city-owned historic buildings. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Take care. Bye now.